Hey, this is Tommy with AldermanFarms. There's two things you need to know about pollinators. One, they're important. Two, they're in trouble. Pollinators are important because without pollinators, our food supply would be a mere fraction of what it needs to be to supply food for your family, this country, and the world. Pollinators are in trouble for lots of reasons, including loss of habitat, the increase of invasive plant species that don't provide the nutrients that the pollinators need, the use of harmful chemicals in agriculture and around homes and gardens, and perhaps mainly due to a lack of understanding among people about who pollinators are, what they do, and why they're important. I was recently blessed to be a part of a wide-ranging discussion with two what you might call experts, Jolene Smith of Smith's Nature Friendly Farms and Sarah Doman of The Artist and the Flower. And we cover lots of this stuff, telling us what we can do, what I can do, what you can do to protect our pollinators. This is part one. Let's go.
Hey ladies, I'm so excited that you guys decided to join me. I'm the newbie, I'm the inexperienced one when it comes to talking about pollination, but here we are in late January, almost February. I think it's time to be thinking about what we can do for the spring to help our pollinators. Y'all know I'm fired up about honeybees, but I'm also fired up about bumblebees. I'm also fired up about native bees. And now that I know native bees exist, I notice them. And I see these little alien looking critters that I've never noticed before. And they're so amazing looking. And so I want you to help us here at AldermanFarms to make our area a pollinator heaven. And I want you to help us tell everybody else in Zone 8B and maybe elsewhere what they can do to make pollinator-friendly habitat. So before we do anything else, I want you guys to take a moment, each of you, and introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us who you are, how you came to be so fascinated and well-versed in all things pollination, and also where my audience can maybe find you online and follow your exploits. So I'm joined tonight by Jolene Smith and Sarah Doman. Jolene, you go first. Tell us who you are, how you came to be a pollinator guru.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Jolene Smith, as already stated. I am actually originally from Calgary, Alberta, and made the shift and moved down to Mississippi. And slightly before that, I became super...
Is that in Texas?
What was that?
Is that in Texas?
Alberta?
Yeah.
No. Canada.
It's in Canada, eh?
Canada, eh? Y'all.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so made the move, made the shift down here. And slightly before that time, I don't know what happened, but I became very interested in pollinators. In Canada, I lived in a town more city-like, and you actually have to hand pollinate a lot of your flowers. So when you grow a pumpkin, you got to get up and go out and pollinate them because you won't have enough pollinators. And I started to notice this really scary decline in our pollinators overall. When I came down here, a little bit of different story, but it doesn't mean that the opportunity didn't exist. So I still became and still retained with me this passion for it. So in that time, I have taken some courses on pollination. I am like a pollinator champion. It's an online course you can take. I highly recommend it through the Michigan University. And just I operate a small market garden in the area, and I work with the lovely Patty at the farmers market, and that's me.
Good. Thank you very much. You know, I took that, I forgot about that. I'm a pollinator champion too.
Yes, that makes you an expert.
Yeah. Well, you made the recommendation for that course, and I took it and really enjoyed it. Thanks excellent. For that. Sarah, tell us about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? How did you get into the pollinating business? Well, I guess not really pollinating, but pollinator business.
Well, I am originally from Pennsylvania. I also moved to Mississippi, and I'm an artist. I'm an art teacher, but I did an artist residency several years ago, like a decade ago, and I got injured. And I thought there's got to be a way to do things naturally, and I want to figure it out. So I just went down the internet rabbit hole of herbs and plants and eating healthy, having a healthy lifestyle. And I just started respecting nature a lot more. And I just like I had a connection to art, I really started to get this connection to plants. So I always had like house plants and always grew things with family and in little gardens and stuff. But I just kind of like went for it one year and just grew just like everything I could get my hands on. And it just kind of comes with the territory when you're wanting to grow stuff. And just as you learn more and more and more, you realize like pollinators are a big deal. and living in Mississippi, we can just grow things all the time. We just can have something growing all the time, and it's amazing. And now I'm a flower farmer, and I'm not in town, but I'm not in, I call it the boonies, the woods. I'm kind of in this cool little zone between. And I don't think I have a lack of pollinators, but I feel like there's some things that I do that I just kind of learned along the way that are promoting them. And then the gobs of flowers that I grow are definitely helpful. So that's kind of where I'm at. I have a Facebook page. It's The Artist in the Flower. I'm not super active on there all year round. I kind of just get on there when I have in flower production, because I am a full-time teacher. So I kind of save flower farming for the summer, but I'm kind of, that might change as well. So
good. Jolene, I'm gonna give you a chance to give your social media stuff too. But first, let me say this. Sarah, we go kind of far back with Sarah, actually.
Yeah.
With the, and I don't forgot what it was even called, the Mississippi, what was the network with Daniel?
Okay.
I'm embarrassed.
There's a couple. There's the Mississippi Sustainable Agriculture Network.
That's it.
And then we had that other nonprofit that was, I
don't know, but that was it. That was the one that we were involved in the Homestead Education Center in Starkville and whatnot.
Yep.
And we were all kind of there in, I don't know if it was the infancy of all that, but not long after, I think, that it had all gotten started, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes. That's kind of how I remember it too, is we went to that conference and we were all like in our little areas of Mississippi trying to do stuff. And it was such a great networking event. And I feel like it just really like exploded after that.
Yeah.
So, especially for Mississippi.
So Jolene, quickly jump in and tell our followers where they can find you.
Oh, absolutely. I totally missed that. I am Smith Nature Friendly Farms. You can find us pretty much on all the typical places: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And we also have a YouTube channel as well. It's fairly young, but it's there. And and I post on it. And we do a lot of posts on pollinators.
Who the heck are pollinators? Jolene, what are we talking about? Well, everybody knows bumblebees. Everybody knows honeybees. But tell us about the pollinator community. It's a lot wider than maybe people realize.
Oh, it's huge. And it's funny. Everybody's number one is definitely the honeybee. And the honeybee is actually not even a native pollinator. It's certainly a valuable pollinator. Don't get me wrong. I love honeybees and I love honey. But truly, the actual native bees are the bumblebees that exist. But outside of bees in general, there are lizards, bats, mosquitoes pollinate, believe it or not. They drive me crazy, but they do pollinate. Moths are huge pollinators. Those hornworms that everybody can't stand, they turn into great pollinators. I got 66 gourds from not one hornworm, from multiple hornworms that turn into sphinx moth. So there's lots of different pollinators out there. I don't know, Sarah, if you're thinking of any others that I may have missed.
I'm not sure if you said wasps, but I think I just want to point that, when you're outside with your kids and you're, just out in nature trying to enjoy things and something comes along and you're like, oh, kill it. You got to think it has its part in this process. And is it a pollinator is a big part of this process that we need to remember. Now, you don't want a wasp nest in your front door, But if there's one, out at the end of your yard or in, a corner of your property, leave it alone, leave it there, and that's something that, we struggle with, like the mosquitoes. You don't want mosquitoes everywhere, but they have their part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think you have to be willing to balance concerns. Yeah. So like Jolene and Patty and I, Patty and Jolene have had these funny little back and forths about the tomato hornworms. I've got bad news for you, Jolene. We are not providing hornworm haven here at AldermanFarms. They get popped with the quickness.
Oh, no.
Or fed to the chickens, at least.
No.
Yeah.
Love them. But so, on balance, though, what we want to do is offset the and there may be some particular pollination success that we could credit to those giant moths that come out of a hornworm. Well, we're trying to grow tomatoes, and so we have to balance our desire to grow tomatoes with maybe not experiencing the success that moth could help us in other areas. But in order to offset it, we need to be doing what we can do to attract other pollinators that don't eat tomato plants, if that makes sense. Am I okay? Are you okay? Do you need a drink of water, Jolene?
Well, I am going to stick up for hornworms a little bit. Like sometimes what you're doing for pollinators is, first off, is changing your view. You actually talked about it at the beginning. You said at the beginning of this, you are starting to notice things. And that is probably the greatest thing about a person that's suddenly become enlightened about pollinators, is they no longer just look at their yard and flail their arms at bugs everywhere. They start to go, oh, yay, I've got one of those, or I need to know what that is. And that's the exciting part of it. So that's first one. And then the second one is when you get these ones that are pests, you start to think, well, what kind of value do you have and how can I manage them differently? So hornworms, for example, you take them and take them off into the bushes and pick out 10 at a time, whatever you're normally doing to get them, and take them off into the bushes. They're not going to run back to your tomato plant. They're not going to make it there by the time they need to morph into their new form. They're not an army. They're not going to take over. They are going to breed more sphinx moths, but that's going to happen naturally, whether you kill them or not. They're going to occur. So if you could change your practices overall, you're going to see a massive increase in the number of pollinators, and that balance that happens over time with things like wasps. Wasps, for example, was a great mention by Sarah. They actually kill off the hornworms. Part of their process is to inject them with something that kills the hornworm. Well, there'll be more wasps, there'll be more hornworms for them to kill, there's more supply, and they all work in balance. And that's what we're doing right now, is we're wrecking the balance. We're taking out the things that other things need in order to survive, thus lessening the pollinators.
Yep. That's a fair point. And I guess I've never thought about relocating the hornworms. And I may have to do that with gritted teeth. But
you'll be sending me pictures. Look, I saved them.
Yeah. Of course, the chickens will be losing out. Anyway,
I'm sure they won't starve.
Yeah, and it's funny. You talk about beginning to noticing things. It's like, I'll never forget. Years ago, my wife wanted a donkey for her birthday. It's one of the reasons I married her. She baits her own hooks and she wants donkeys for her birthday. So what do you think happened the moment we got a donkey? I saw donkeys everywhere. I'd never noticed how many donkeys there were in Lincoln County, in pastures with cattle. They are predator protection. They'll stomp a coyote in the dirt, a donkey will. And, it's the old Volkswagen Beetle thing, that once you start looking, suddenly they're everywhere.
Yes.
And as I began learning about native bee species, you mentioned the bumblebee as a native bee, but gosh, is it thousands or is it hundreds or thousands of native bees in North America? Native bees.
4,000, I think, is approximately.
Yeah, that's what
like 20,000 worldwide, different varieties of native bees.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had time, and the skills to research all of them and document them. But I know good and well I spotted 5 or 6 different little bee things. Well, it turns out, you know, like I said, I'm not skilled enough or knowledgeable enough. One of them I took a beautiful picture of. I don't think I'll try to find it. And if I find it, it'll be right here. But it's probably not right here because I probably can't find it. I was all tickled to death. And then I got to researching it, did a Google reverse or whatever, and it was a fly. It was some kind of fly. But it was still gorgeous, you know. And it's just funny how there's no telling how many times before those were in my field of vision and I never noticed them because I wasn't cognizant of their existence, you know. So anyway, pretty neat.
It is awesome.
So there's a brief introduction to our pollinators. There's no way we could do that justice. But what do we need to start thinking about as spring approaches to make our, wherever we live, whether it's in an apartment building with a balcony or on a large tract of land like we have here at Alderman Farms, how do we start thinking about attracting pollinators to our space?
All righty, you've met the experts, we've met a few pollinators, and hopefully we've teased you well enough to make you want to watch part 2, in which we're going to discuss ways in which we can make our living areas more attractive to pollinators so that we can help them thrive, which in turn will help us thrive. Hey, see you in part 2. Before you go, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content just like this. Thanks.